All right, my friends, it's Steve with Real Progressives. Tonight, I have got my friend and author, journalist, activist, all-around curious guy, John Matthew Laurits, who is just a phenomenal writer. Many of you guys have read his stuff. It's just really, really good. He takes an incredible amount of time to research every subject that he dives into. Tonight is no different. For those of you who have been around folks that claim to be Marxist, you know that we end up struggling an awful lot getting them to not just understand MMT, but to understand that they're not in conflict with one another. And what is beautiful about John reached out to me and he says, Steve, I'm going to write an article and I'm going to explore Marx in monetary systems and this MMT thing. You know, I'm going to figure out how this all works together. And do you mind if I call you periodically? And so for weeks, we kept meeting up late at night on the phone, talking through MMT, talking about any question he had. And I started wondering, is he ever going to get this article out? But lo and behold, he was really, really working his tail end off at getting the issues right. And he went ahead and published it. And so tonight we're going to bring John on to talk about his journey from being just Marx and not knowing MMT to really diving in, talking to people and learning MMT and still retaining his background with Marx. So without further ado, let me bring on my guest, John Laurits. Welcome to Real Progressive, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Steve.
No problem, man. Dude, I am like stoked after all the conversations you and I had about, you know, how you were going to approach this article and your digging and everything. You know, I'll be honest with you, very few people are curious enough to dig in like you did. And that's scary because we've got to change the minds of an awful lot of people so we can make progress. And there you are, digging in, asking what exactly was it that got you thinking about diving into this subject to begin with, man?
Well, first I'll say that I've done quite a bit of writing like on economic subjects before that and it's hard to get people interested in monetary systems. Like even that kind of phrase often will kind of scare people off, and so that's kind of one of the most challenging parts of like a lot of what I do is trying to make it not scary, trying to make it accessible. And as far as like what originally drew me, I mean, it was really I worked with Real Progressives like before I was even interested in MMT, and I hadn't really heard about it at all. But yeah, I was really grateful though, because Real Progressives allowed me to like post, like for instance, you guys got me my press pass at Standing Rock, which allowed me to do a lot of reporting that I wouldn't have been able to do like without that. And then just being, behind the scenes at Real Progressives, everyone was talking about MMT all the time, and as I couldn't help but wonder, like, what is this that people are going on about? And these are good people, they're behind other good causes that I know are good, like, Standing Rock, for instance. And I mean, the whole Bernie Sanders, the whole progressive movement in general. And so that's when I started delving into it, and I was like, what the hell are these people talking about? Like, there's taxes don't fund spending, like, what do you mean? So honestly, like, before, like, Marx was familiar with, I'm coming from a Marxist background, and Marx was familiar with, gold money. And I was like, what is this guy talking about? And I started listening and picking up. And then eventually I was like, damn it, I think I have to learn what this is and figure it out. And so, as you said when you were introducing me, I embarked on a huge. It was a while because I wanted to thoroughly understand it before I said anything about it,
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I want to talk to the team here, our crowd here, and tell them, when John put this article out, okay, there was a couple things in the beginning when it came to the history of money and barter that John didn't quite have exactly down. But this is why I brought this guy on. This is why I love him so much. He said, I don't want to have anything wrong. If there's something wrong, please let me know and I'll fix it. And sure enough, I got him in touch with Dr. Hale. And he was like, wow, okay. So he went through and you made the changes. But it was incredibly interesting to me, having been through the troll brigade, firing off, shouting at me, MMT's a psyop, it's a fraud, it's all this, you're a cult leader, it's all this stuff. And there you were, you published this phenomenal article, and what happens in the comment section of your article, voila, you get the Steve Grumbine treatment in spades. And it was amazing to watch, because it didn't take any time. All of them came in there, just starting to talk.
I was immediately brigaded. Yeah.
Well, to talk a little bit about where the comments were coming from and what was, because I sent as many people over there as I could to defend you, because you did God's work.
That was great.
Well, talk about this, because this is an important thing, because I want people to know this got nothing to do with being a cult leader or anything other weird shit. It's purely fact-based. You've done your homework. Dude, you did more homework than I did probably. So when you think about it, these people have obviously not done their homework, or I don't know how they got to the conclusions they did, but they just had lots and lots of ad hominem attacks. And you take it from here, man.
Yeah, and I think it's more importantly than not having done their homework, which I've certainly been among those who haven't done my homework, and there's still many subjects that I'm working on my homework for, but it's that they don't seem interested in doing their homework. They don't want to do it. They're not going to, or I hope that some of them do. But it was wild. It was within the hour of when I published the article, I started getting I get some comments, over on my website. It's just a pretty high volume, but all of them were kind of echoing the same kind of. I'm still not entirely sure, because a lot of it was conflicting. As you said, there's a lot of ad hominems and everything, but there seemed to be a lot of paranoia about the banks and about the Federal Reserve and kind of. Yeah, I was like, wow, and I started responding to them. I just wanted to I always try to speak with as many commenters as I can, and I always try to be I try to listen to actually what they're saying, and sometimes I'm wrong. I don't know, sometimes, oh wow, you're right. There's something I overlooked, but I like to talk with them. But there was just too many for me to I couldn't type fast enough to keep up with this brigade of MMT haters, they were pissed that I had just written an article, trying to explain the concept, which is really kind of the primary purpose of that first article was, and I got another one in the works too that's going to be more thoroughly kind of tying it in with the Marxist framework, which I think I've succeeded at doing, but we'll see when the article comes out. But this one, I was just laying out the model, and people were immediately just angry. So many people. And so I went over to you, Steve, and I was like, there's a bunch of weirdos in my comments, do you know who these people are? Where did they all come from? Because I also know, I recognize the regular commenters on my blog. I know the names, and just none of them were people who. There was a couple that were regular, but there was a dozen that weren't, and I was like, who are these people? And then within 20 minutes, we had you and the whole kind of real progressives, editors chat had hopped in, and they were, there was just a brawl then. It was all these MMT folks, including Steve, and everybody came rushing in. I was handling it. He was like, thank God, So I couldn't type fast enough, you know, and a lot of them were saying similar stuff, and so
Well,
I'm grateful for the assistance.
well, it's really, you know, like for real. I don't have, how can I put this? I don't really care about MMT, even though that's pretty much what I talk about. It's going to sound strange. What I care about is what it gives us, you know, because for years we've all been locked in this paradigm of wondering why we can't get anything done. And it's just literally maddening if you really want to get something done and you feel like you're in a box and you can't break out of that box, and it drives you crazy. And then someone hands you the keys to get out of the box. And when you get out of the box and you look and you're like, son of a bitch, they've been lying all this time. I've been in this cell thinking that the world is this big and that there's only this many possibilities and that we can't do great things because, after all, we're in a box. And then all of a sudden you see the daylight and you're looking around, you're like, son of a bitch, we can do it all. We can literally do it all. And for me, it's the do it all part that caught my attention. Not the, hey, man, I'm just an MMT guy, you know? And MMT is fun. Once you learn it, you're like, wow. You're like, how many other lies am I going to peel back the layers on and realize I've been snowed for 48 years? Or, you know, and I mean, everybody I talk to, when they have that aha moment, it's a really painful moment because they realize how many people have died in you know, helping this lie along. And then you look at your friends, you realize how many of them are guilty of passing the lie on. And then you look at the people that you once worshipped as politicians, and you realize how many of them are passing the lie on. And you're like, oh my God, please let me go back to sleep. I don't want to know this anymore, because this is like, shit, people are dying for no reason. What the hell, man? And that's the part that really gets you.
Yeah, it's like one that gets me now is and you talked about it too. You call it the taxpayer dollar myth, and it's like now I hear that phrase everywhere. It's like, well, no, that's not how it works exactly. I'm like, damn it. But it's like, so many conversations. I'm like, all right, hold on.
Don't you wish you could get reinserted in the matrix sometimes? Don't you wish you could just go back in there and get reinserted?
Yeah, it reminds that Cypher, the scene with Cypher when he's, eating the steak with Mr. Smith, and he's just like, and after all these years, I realized, like, ignorance is bliss. He takes the bite of that steak, it's, the Matrix. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a falling away of like false kind of boundaries. It's like, oh, we really weren't limited, or we were. I was limiting my understanding, and as a society, we're still constraining our behavior and limiting our, really limiting the possibilities that are open to us, like through this. Yeah, and that's what it's a false kind of idea, and it's understandable to me, like, because the idea of gold is money makes sense. Like it's something you can easily like, I get that, I get how that works, and we're stuck on it, even though that's just, we're not. I've never traded a gold coin in my life. It's all paper. it's all paper and copper.
Say that. I think for me the fascinating thing, as somebody who didn't really understand Marx at a level that a Marxist would understand Marx, but understanding Marx from a textbook sense and having been through it and understanding that it's really more of a description of the balance between capital and labor, and really understanding that play there. It's not so much an economic system, more of a description of it's like a description as well. It's a description of Marx, relationships.
Marx really honed in on, and like for me, like Marx, if there is any such thing as Marxism, like Marxism is it's really more of a method of working with and understanding, and most importantly, like applying that understanding to transform society through history. Like that's, and Marx offered this like very similar to like, there's like the scientific method, or whatever. You come up with a hypothesis, and there is there's a procedure. So it's like you're like, does it work this way? Like, okay, well, let me try to. So what is an experiment that would disprove that? You know, and so then you try experiments, you try to disprove your hypothesis, and then if you disprove it, then you're okay, cool. You check that off your list. You know that's not how it works. You come up with a new hypothesis. Marxism is a method like that, except it's like it's a sociological and a historical and a revolutionary kind of procedure, like method of understanding, and it changes, you know, like he didn't advocate any fixed worldview, and he really focused in on, like you said, the real material relations of production, you know, that like were occurring like on the shop floor, you know, like at the grocery store. It's like, you know, you're a clerk, you know, who has power over you, this manager who has power over him, you know, like what are these real material relationships of power and control like in society, where do they come from and how do we change them? You know, but yeah, he really like he kind of wrote off money in a big way. Or like, yeah, like that he I mean he really described so he was looking at the gold standard kind of, you know, money that he was observing in Britain in the the mid 1800s. And he looked at that and he said it was a fetish. He said we had fetishized gold, you know, and that money really was no object, you know, but it was an expression of power relationships, you know, but like he thought that the gold thing was pretty arbitrary, you know, and silly at the time.
Well, you have taken, in my mind, you've taken the bull by the horns and addressed something vital, because you look at the Green Party, you look at like Socialist Alternative. I'm sure there are other socialist-based parties, groups like DSA, and even further left of that, in this country, quite frankly, that are waiting for this revolution to occur before they actually take part in being a part of society. I've experienced this hands down with these people because I'm desperate to bring them into the fold, because that may be where we end up someday, but we're not there yet. And where we are today is just as important as where we might be someday down the road. And
yeah,
so
that's the most important thing, is where we are right now, you know, like what are the what's the real material situation that we're working with here, and how do we move forward?
Yeah,
not backward.
When you say, I want to say this, when you and I talked, for me, one of the most important things you brought out in our discussion was the fact that you were concerned about how things work today. And you really you had a curiosity that is expected, in my opinion, for anybody taking this journey, because it'll wear you out if you're not in for the long haul. Because once your eyes are open, you literally can't crawl back into the hole. You can't. It just doesn't work that way. You can't unsee it. So now you're stuck. So, but for you,
now you understand this, and you're burnt, and you have to go forward from here.
You, to me, I remember being concerned. A lot of people that do ask me questions are not really asking me questions. They're really trying to set me up, thinking they're going to trip me up. Yeah. They want to joust with the cult leader. They're not really asking in good faith. And so my fuse with the bad faithers is pretty short. And so when you came into the mold, I was like, I hope he's being straight, because if he's straight, this is a huge win. This is the stuff that I've been praying for. It's just stuff I'm working hard for. And someone such as yourself, who's articulate, capable of taking thought to paper and being able to express it in such a way that other people want to read it and other people will absorb, which you say is a key tenet of your writing and your whole ethos. For me, it was a tremendous opportunity, but I was scared to death. And then, lo and behold, I found out you were the genuine article. You were really asking questions. You really meant every question you asked. There was no fluff. There was no. You were serious. And I said, shit, man, put everything on hold. This is where my attention needs to be. And I mean, I loved every minute of our conversations. I was so excited. I mean, you couldn't see right now, even telling you about it, I got goosebumps on my arm, because that's how big a deal this is to me. I mean, you do this 24/7 by 365 for years and years, and you see people when they come and they learn, it's like, thank God, yes, because you need to make huge I see folks literally in the streets today. I see people literally with a newspaper for a blanket. You see people that are begging, their teeth are falling out of their mouth. And, you don't have to be homeless to have bad teeth. I'm sitting there with the same situation.
Oh, yeah.
No dental care. But we could fix that too. You know what I mean? You realize that that should start a revolution. That's why I'm pushing. That should be enough to start a revolution. Talk to me a little bit about that, man.
I'm sure anyone who's had a toothache should agree with you there. I mean, toothaches suck, man. It sucks. I was blessed to never pick up the candy habit, but I have several friends who, it's awful. It's like they don't have any kind of health insurance or plan that will cover the procedures they need to stop being in pain, And it's like, seems like a small thing, but it's a huge thing if you're the one with that that going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just want to say too. Yeah, I was very grateful for you making your for all those conversations, and as you said, I'm glad you gave me the benefit of the doubt, because I wasn't trying to trap you. I was really trying to understand, and it's not a. In one sense, it's a really easy thing to understand, and in another sense, it can be very, very difficult. It depends on how you're coming at it. And sorry, what?
No. I want to bring your image up that you created. This diagram here that you put together was just fantastic. I mean, for somebody just getting started in this thing and putting this thing together, do you want to walk the audience through your thinking here?
Yeah, sure. And first, I want to state that I'm aware that it's a simplified kind of model here, and I intended it to be so. I tried to kind of trim away as much of the kind of there are some little things that are incorrect here, but I think that the overall image, I think it captured what I wanted to, what I wanted it to. But I really, what I did was I stole someone's diagram of a battery. Actually, was what that originally was, from just a Google image search. I was looked around, but anyway, so I found that, and let's see, how do I start here? Well, I mean, first of all, obviously, it's what we're looking at here is like a circuit, sort of, and what I wanted to convey was so that container there, that is kind of, that represents the economy as a whole, all the people who are producing and distributing and exchanging goods and services in. Oh wait, hold on one second. My computer's trying to start over on me. Stop it. Remind me tomorrow. Okay, all right, I'm back. That would have been bad. But this is where I really see an intersection, a very clear intersection with Marxism, in that so what that represents is the actual material capacity of the organization of materials and resources and labor, and whether that's being utilized or not. So then the empty space is that it's those resources and that labor which is not being, it's not being activated. It's, as you mentioned earlier, that there are I live in a small town, and we have a good couple dozen homeless folks who I try to cultivate good friendships with and everything, and so it's these folks who are on the corner asking for money, that there's not jobs for them, there's not. I mean, the capitalists aren't paying them to produce any value, even though they surely could. They could, they have value. I don't know. And so it's that capacity. Once we reach that capacity and we've put every person to work, and we're actually using like the resources that we have. I mean, this is a huge country. This is a huge country. We have, I mean, this is the wealthiest nation, both, you know, like economic or like money wise, like money, speaking of money, but also with resources. I mean, it's just, if you've ever driven across the United States, I mean, it's really, I mean, it's amazingly, it's huge. And there's I think, yeah, we could be doing a lot more there. And so this circuit here is showing how, like, that's truly the constraint that we're working with, not the amount of money, not the amount of funding. And it's not that, like, they can't just print more, print more. That we're actually constrained by real resources, real labor, like material constraints, not money constraints, not funding constraints. And so what I was trying to convey here is that, yeah, is that we have all that space there. We have all that space there, and we can have a federal jobs program. We could have a federal self-managed, workers' job guarantee right now. And we can push that all the way till, like, we can't, till we can't because of material reasons, And so that's what I was trying to convey.
One of the things that I think you did really well here, and I don't know if folks realize this or not, but like in J.D. Alt's diagram, J.D. Alt would show that barrel out at the taxation. You've got the X through the dollar sign, you got the dotted line there. In J.D. Alt's program, it just shows basically the dollars are deleted from the system. So taxes are literally not paying for stuff. We're not reusing. It's not like those tax dollars are suddenly, being, it's like every dollar spent is a new dollar. And so the idea here is that, as you watch this, you realize that if we haven't hit full employment, and by full employment, we're not talking about these crazy adjusted labor dollars. We're talking about real 100% involuntary unemployment eradicated. Anybody that wants a job has a job. If you figure it this way, if taxes are there to be returned as, to keep the currency, alive and well, then you know what? You should force the government. The government owes you a job. The government owes you a job. And if it's going to impose a tax payable only in its currency, and you can only get said currency from working, damn it, they owe you a job. So there should be a public option for employment, and that's what a federal job guarantee is. And what you've done here is really, really actually fantastic work. So I'm going to drop this down.
Thanks.
And I'm going to go ahead and bring us back into the fold here.
There's one other thing I wanted to say on that diagram too, and that's that, like, one of the like more beautiful possibilities there to, like, with that so like with a federal jobs like guarantee, like the government owes you a damn job. Like, imagine if that were so. And what I think is really cool about that is, like, one of the things that really pisses me off to hear is when people are like, that they argue against food stamps or against, providing healthcare or housing to people or whatever. Like, just go get a job, or whatever. And so that they're making this moral judgment, about all these people that they don't know, right? But, like, imagining a future where, like, where it was kind of, that was in place and people were guaranteed a job. And let's say maybe there comes a point where, we kind of don't need anyone to do anything else that's not already being done. We could maybe divvy up and shorten people's hours and spread them out to other people, but that would, like, completely destroy the basis for such, forgive my French, but bullshit, like moral judgments that are made today, like about people who are on welfare, who have food stamps, who have, stuff. And that's one of the things that I really like about that idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
The prospect yeah.
It's funny because you see people like Paul Ryan come out there and they lie. I mean, bold-faced lie about, Social Security being broke, They bold-faced lie about, having to cut, different welfare programs. They bold-faced lie about having to make hard choices, the sequestration where they lay people off. You look here's the thing. If you think about the state being the fountain from which all money cometh, even including bank money, which is really IOUs, not the same thing as federal spending is. When you think about it like that, and you start realizing that when the federal government spends money into existence, that is how states are able to be flush with cash, because states are dependent on taxes or federal grants or bonds and different forms of monetary instruments. They are literally, you see the money pool shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and then all of a sudden the states have to start repairing roads, repairing bridges, fixing schools, taking care of early education, taking care of the homeless, taking care of the hungry, all these programs that are vital to our existence, to the especially the least capable of handling a downturn in the economy. They are screwed because of all the people that want to reduce the deficit and reduce the debt. And those people that purvey that, in my opinion, have crossed the realm from just being ideologically bankrupt to murderers by proxy. They've gone to the trouble because the guy that's going to die in the cold, he's dying because you cut spending. Sorry if you don't like it. That's the dealio. I mean,
and people are dying. I lived in Colorado for 5 years when I was going to school, and I lived in the Front Range, and it gets cold. It gets cold there, and I mean, there's just a certain number of homeless people that just die. They just die every year, and it's expected, and that's because they don't have housing. It's because they don't have housing with heating, and and the fact that we can't afford that, and we're pretending like we aren't, like that. If you know that, then you're complicit. You're complicit in that murder, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, I mean, dude, this is, for me.
If you don't know that, you learn it as quick as you can. But if you know it, then you're a damn murderer if you advocate that.
Let's role play for a minute, okay? Because the guys that came to your article, I can tell you what they believe and what they stand for and how they approach it. And we can talk about why I'm not exactly a fan of theirs besides the modern monetary theory. But you see them, they say that they want to reform banking. So they're heavy advocates for this thing called the Need Act. And what they're really trying to do is they're trying to eliminate private credit. They're trying to basically eliminate the banking system, and they're trying to eliminate them making a profit or whatever. And so as they go and they examine this stuff, they assume that all debt is the same sort of debt. But if you are the guy that is the monopoly banker and you're the one that creates the dollars, saying you're in debt is kind of like a joke because you create dollars at will, And so they put a lot of emphasis on this debt that the nation's under, when the nation, what it does is really, it takes money out of circulation. These, like, let's say China, hypothetically, China will do a lot of trade with the U.S. And sometimes they'll take their dollar holdings home with them because they use dollars in different purposes. A lot of times they'll leave them parked right there at the Federal Reserve. Now they have a choice. They can just leave it sit there, or they can go ahead and buy treasuries that actually have interest on them. Now, I'm not a dummy. I'm going to go ahead and look for the interest, right? That's the government's debt, is them taking their existing U.S. dollars and then going ahead and buying a treasury. They haven't done anything. They've just moved their money, the same U.S. dollars. They didn't borrow any dollars or anything like that. The same U.S. dollars, they move them into a different account, and now they get a little teeny bit of an interest on it, which anybody with a brain would do. And then they don't just cash that out and dump dollars. If they dump dollars, then they can't do business with the U.S. So they naturally, it would be mutually self-assured destruction. So the fact of the matter is that what they do is they keep the money there to exist, to facilitate transactions in the U.S.
Yeah, they opened up a savings account that they're using to like
Exactly.
this is
So this is the big thing that these people you were talking to are desperately fearful of. And so
yeah.
in their mind, they have to get rid of the national debt. Then they have to get rid of the Federal Reserve. Then after they've gotten rid of the Federal Reserve and they've eliminated the debt, then and only then can they actually take the steps to save their first life. Because after all, we can't let the banksters get a nickel. See, they're worried about that bankster getting a nickel. I'm worried about the little people not having food in their mouth today. And so you can tell where are your priorities. I know where mine are. Yeah. And I can see where theirs are. That's why I call them murderers by proxy, because they are more than content to let every single person suffering today die while they go off and chase the Rothschilds and chase their other things that they want to chase.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, with all due respect, your priorities are FUBAR. We don't have a lot in common. Now, if you get rid of the
you're all
rebels.
Switched around.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so talk to me a little bit about, as you dug through your process of digging through these kind of issues, you know, what went through your head? I mean, you obviously were able to walk into this with a clear mind, and you made a point of being free to dissolve bad ideas and embrace new ones. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, like first I want to say, like, and like I hopped into those comments, you know, and you guys are all in there, and it was a fun battle we had there. And I'll say, like I spoke with a few of the ones that, you know, were less personal attacky, ad hominem-y, you know, the ones that were a little bit more civil, you know. And I was I can certainly understand, you know, like wanting to, you know, I mean, I would also love to, you know, to get these damn like bankers and people like that. But like you said, it's just that the priority here should be immediately like implementing like a money infrastructure that we can immediately address like the issues that we have right now. And, you know, like, for example, like homeless folks and everything, like we could be doing something about that. We could be, there's no reason for us to have any involuntary unemployment right now. You know, like we could be doing that like now. And then, like, honestly, if we're doing that, then okay, like I'm willing to talk about, like, let's talk about how we can, you know, screw over the bankers now. Like, that's fine. But yeah, but they're just fixated on it. They're just locked on it. We need to do this first. And it's kind of like, I'll just draw a parallel to the Marxist world, and it's kind of I have a lot of sympathy for a lot of like Trotsky's ideas and everything, but like it was similar in that like Trotsky was just like, he insisted that like had to do everything at once, like everything, all these things first. We have to spread the revolution, like we have to have a world revolution, and then, you know, we can have a Soviet revolution, whereas everyone else was like, well, like let's focus on trying to build socialism here first, you know, and because if we don't, we're screwed. You know, like we got to focus on the task at hand. Yeah, and that's what I think that the Trotskyists often miss, and that's what it seems like these guys are missing, is they're getting fixated on. Yeah, I mean, there's reasons or whatever, but as you said, it's just their priorities are FUBAR. They're
well, if you do algebra,
backwards.
right? You still, when you do an algebra equation, you still have to do everything left of the equal sign. You still have to do all the you know, order of operations. It's not like you're going to skip the addition and subtraction. You're just doing your multiplication and your division first. And so when you look at this and you start asking yourself, what comes first? Let the people be whole.
Yeah.
And when I think about this,
this is a good way to put it, the order of operations. I like that.
Absolutely. And so they're trying to do addition and subtraction before they take care of the parentheses and everything that needs to be done. And so you look at this and you say to yourself, okay, why are the rich so damn rich? There's so many reasons, right? But one of the big ones that really, really stemmed in the mid 70s and through the Reagan era and has just kept growing is the idea that we financialize our existence. We have to go to a bank and borrow money just to survive. A lot of people have to go to payday lenders just to survive. People are put in horrific situations.
And some people just don't survive, you know?
Bingo. And so as you're looking at this and you're saying, well, why is that happening? Well, it's happening because the federal government stopped spending, so the people are left with two choices, die or borrow. And so they borrow. And when you borrow, now you're a debt slave. You are a debt slave because you cannot create your own money at will. So in order for you to survive, you got to do something. And this is how the wealthy really took off, is they financialized our existence. They've been creaming the crop on the interest of our loans and our debt. And some of this debt is 100% interest. I mean, these guys are really raking the poor over. And it just, if you satisfy the people and they are no longer put in a predatory situation where they've got to take money that they would otherwise not need to make because they would be making it as an earning, as labor, as something from a federal job guarantee, right? Now all of a sudden, people are not forced to be whores for debt. They can literally make different choices. Go ahead, man. Talk about it.
And now you don't need to take a loan. You know, no, there's a really strong parallel with Marxism, I think, as well. I mean, Marx described, like, are you familiar with the term the surplus army of labor? It's I mean, but basically, that like there's a systemic unemployment built into the system of which lower at a structural level, because it's just I like to reframe it because there's no reason to call it wages, really. I mean, what we're doing is we're selling our hours to capitalists, and the price of our hours, which is what our days are made of, which is what our weeks are made of, which is what our months and years and our lives are made of, the time that we have. It's the price. It's the price of us, you know. And they drive that price down and force us into this coercive situation where I'm forced to accept, a $10 per hour wage, even though that's not a living wage. I have no other choice. I have no other recourse. They own everything. They own all the private property, the private means of production property. And it's a very similar situation. Yeah, like with the money here, in that, like, so to me, like, as a Marxist, like, something like a federal jobs program, like, what that's doing is that's actually, in a pretty, like, real sense, that's actually seizing. It's seizing the means of production in a way, it's I mean, because it's saying, like, all right, like, you are no longer going to be held hostage, by banks or by, like, all these capitalists who won't give you a job, who are the ones who are sending you to the door of the banks to get the loan, and then you're enriching them and you become a debt slave to them, and we're just going to cut them out and we're going to directly give you, a job with a living wage,
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, like, all these capitalists or banksters or whatever, they all of a sudden have a hell of a lot less bargaining power. Like, they don't have that same. There no longer is a surplus army of labor. There no longer is this coercive control over. Yeah, I mean, and so this is where, like, it seems to me that, like, Marxism and MMT really do, like, meet. They're using different languages, but they're talking about the same basic principle, and that is taking public, taking social, taking collective control over the means to control our own destinies and to take care of ourselves, and to not have these powerful, wealthy, whether they're financial capitalists, bankers, or industrialists with their factories and all that, but it's cutting them out, and then they no longer have this exclusive private control over that, means to produce value, means to produce the value that sustains our existence, like that. seems to intersect to me in a really real way with Marxism.
I've got another diagram you drew that I'm going to throw up here.
Oh yeah.
This one right here I felt was worth bringing up as well. Do you want to take a crack at describing this for others that maybe are not familiar with this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is from not the last article I did, but the article before that, the middle class myth, and that's that I for a long time I've been. It's kind of like every time someone, and everyone talks about it on all the politics. They love to talk about the middle class, and everyone thinks that they are middle class, which is what this diagram is showing. And so we got here, so this is this year. It's actually slightly lower than usual. It's usually 60, 61, 62. It's just Gallup polling data. It's not anything, any weird source or anything. But yeah, we got 58% here that think that they're in the middle class, and then there's another 38% who identify as working or lower class. And as you can see, that's not really as someone who works with language, I don't think that's really how the word middle works. And as someone who works with math, I mean, in statistics, the middle is defined it's a section of a numbers where the number of entries on both sides are equal, and that's not what we have. In no sense is this is our idea of the middle class middle. And it's also it has nothing to do with the sociological definition of class, or which is basically the Marxist definition for class, which has to do with that relationship that I was talking about a moment ago, that sort of relationship of coercion, where you're just kind of essentially forced to sell yourself, your labor, for this price wage, because you have no control. So that lack of control, that lack of ownership over, I don't own, say, a factory, or I don't own a mine, or a gold mine or a steel, I don't know, I don't have any means of production. I can't put myself to work. I rent my house. I can't even stay in my house unless I work for others or find some other way to scrape up the dough, So that's how class is defined, that relationship. So that's my relationship. I think that's going to be a lot of our viewers or listeners here. Absolutely. A lot of your relationship to the means of production is one of non-ownership, and it's not that you don't own a house or a car or a computer or some books or whatever. Those are personal possessions. What we're talking about is the ownership over means to produce, the means to put yourself to work. We don't own that. And so that's actually how class works. And so that's the proletariat or working class. And then the other class, if there may be one or two in the audience, and I don't want to offend you, but but so people who do own, a factory, or who own, who own this. And I'm not concerned with, small business people. They're basically proletariat too, because they're not making enough money to, I mean, they're barely paying the bills, to keep their business. They're exploiting themselves, really, is what's happening. I mean, they're being forced to exploit themselves. And so I have incredible sympathy. That's called the petite bourgeoisie. But the real other class is the capitalist class, and they own those things. So they don't need to work because they can just pay you to. They can pay me to, and we have no choice really but to take the deal. And so that's class there. Working class, capitalist class. It's not, as the diagram shows, it's not some stratification divided into, I put the upper 33%, lower middle. That's not, class isn't defined by income. It's not about how much you make, or it's not middle and it's not class. It's a bullshit idea. It's a it's a false idea. So I mean, they're trying to describe income level, I think, is what most people mean when they say middle class.
Yes,
they're saying that I make I make enough that I'm not really scared that I'm going to lose my house tomorrow or something, but I don't make enough not have to work anymore. I think that's what people mean.
So
middle class.
Let me walk you down a pathway of my own real quickly so you can kind of help me understand where it fits within the class structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Grumbine, being a former, drunk and party boy and screw up all around, went and found religion, so to speak, got sober, went to college, got degrees, redeemed the time, so to speak, and kept moving up the quote unquote corporate ladder. And then all of a sudden, strapped with huge debt for trying to bust a move on the education and having children and all that stuff. The good old capitalist class laid off 10,000 of us. I was one of them. And sure enough, I was on the outside looking in. But I'm still carrying the metric ton of debt from housing to 120 plus thousand in student loans, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm with you on the student loans.
I could make 200,000 a year and it's still not lead a life as good as somebody.
Still get your house taken.
Exactly. And so this is what a large number of the quote unquote middle class went through during the global financial crisis. I mean, this phenomenon is not just US based, but in the US.
God. Poor Greece. I mean, like Jesus, like it's everywhere. It's global. So it's a global system.
From your vantage point, and seeing a guy who was quote unquote upper middle class in that mix back in the day, based on the way the U.S. uses the term middle class, and knowing how you have this diagram right here, where do guys like me fit? I mean, we're just regular bottom dwellers too, with the rest of the proletariat, aren't we? I mean, this is the
and that's where your true interests lie. It's and that's the harm that the middle class myth, and this is why I wrote about it. That's the harm that it does, is because like there are people like who might be in a very similar situation to like where they might like, I don't know, like identify as like like coming from an upper middle class background or something, and so then they think that there's like something like, and it's not even like a conscious like like we're better or anything like that, but it's just like they think that they're in a materially different situation than your typical like wage worker, like just fucking hating their lives while they're checking people out at Albertsons day after day after day after day, when they'd rather be like working on cars or I don't like whatever it is that they want to do. Like the class situation, like as far as I'm concerned, that like to split hairs, and so like I'm not going to say that what I'm about to say is completely representative of everything that any Marxist will say, but I think a lot of Marxists would join me, and that like I would really draw the line. I mean, it's really just like if people like have to like go to work and hold a job, and if they stop, they're gonna be screwed. Like that's working class as far as I'm concerned. Some people might say like technically like the upper rungs of that are like, so there's like Marx also described what's called the petite bourgeoisie, which is sort of the it's better off like workers who own like like some small means of production, like I don't know, say like a storefront, like just a shop in the downtown area or something. They're barely making ends meet. So I mean, really, like those are the people who I was saying like they're exploiting themselves, but like they're in the same situation. Like they're in the same situation of being exploited because they don't have like control over means of production, really. Like they have like a tiny bit of control, but they have to keep running on this treadmill to like keep it, Like the real capitalists, those are the ones that are golfing every day, in my opinion. I mean, like they're the ones that really they don't have to work, and they they invest, and they have their hobbies, their projects, their foundations or whatever, but they don't need to work, and those are the people who really control the society by controlling the production of economic value. And we exist in a relationship with that because like they're able to do that because people like you and I have to keep running on this treadmill, right? to keep going, and we're doing like it's like they come together, so they can't be separated. Like it's two sides of a coin. You can't just have one side. And so that's the class structure. So I mean, I would throw you in with the working class, honestly. I mean,
exactly. That's precisely.
Some people might say you're bourgeoisie or something, but like, I think it's a bunch of. What I want to see, I want all these people who other Marxists might call petite bourgeoisie. I want them to just be on our side, and that like that's the key. we want to get everyone on board here, and the middle class myth stops people from. Yeah.
Look, so I want to jump in with this from my vantage point, right? I got pulled over the other day for taillight being out on my car.
Yeah.
And so the taillight's out, and police officer says, "Hey, just want you to know that your license is going to be out of date. It's going to be expired. First week of April, you really ought to think of getting it renewed." Thank God. Then he comes around and looks, and there's the inspection sticker on the front window, and he goes, "Oh my God, you've got 1 day to get this thing inspected before it'll be out of inspection." All right, stop. I look around and I realize that my tires wouldn't pass inspection. They're still good enough to get me from A to B. They're not good enough to get me through inspection. So all of a sudden, the working class spiral is beginning. I don't have enough money to satisfy all these things that are hitting me at once. And it's not like I'm a bad guy. It's not like I'm purposely making bad decisions. I'm not being irresponsible. I am now in a position where I've got to pick or choose. Do I get my car fixed, or do I keep driving illegally to get to and from work until my inspection is taken care of, right? Now, all of a sudden, let's say hypothetically, the garage that's trying to make money doing inspection says, well, it's going to be $1,000 to get your car to pass inspection. Well, where do I get $1,000 on the fly to suddenly pay for my car to get inspection? So I've got a choice. I can drive illegally and take a chance on getting an even bigger fine if they pull me over, or I can go ahead and not pay my mortgage payment, which then all of a sudden is behind. And now all of a sudden I've got a mortgage company coming after me, ready to foreclose on my home. And if I don't, juggling something, maybe it's the electric bill I skip. And now all of a sudden my electric bill, they're coming out ready to turn the electric off. This is the downward spiral. You miss your student loan payment, all of a sudden, or you don't file taxes on time because something got screwed up because of an exercise. Now all of a sudden they go ahead and put a freeze on your deductions, and all of a sudden cost you more money. I mean, the spiral for against the poor, really making life almost unbearable. It's just unbelievable. And I think that between MMT and understanding of Marx and changing the power structure between capital and labor and having a more inclusive society is really vital. I want to let you go ahead and close with that thought. That's kind of like where I want to end and give you a chance to answer and close this out.
All right. Yeah, it's I want to say that like I can sympathize with that completely. We don't have the same type of system over here. I've had to make the same calls. It's like, shit, do I my registration's expired, do I keep driving without registration, or do I or do I not pay the internet bill, which then limits my ability to do the writing and the publishing that I do, and then I'm making less money. And it's this working class spiral that there's almost nothing you can do about it. And I suspect that probably the majority of the people listening here could relate with what you just said, in their own way and in their own situations. And that's the note that I'll choose to close on is that MMT, for a moment, just stripping away all the kind of language and the technical details and everything, the real bottom line here is that the implication is that we can take real material actual control over our lives and over our livelihoods, and that's Marxism. I mean,
I love it. I love it, dude. This was a beautiful, beautiful conversation. I'm so grateful. I hope you'll come back, John. I really do. I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, I'd love to. I feel like this flew by. It was just too short a time, you know.
We can do this a lot more. In fact, you are, I mean, for those people that don't know, you're already an editor at Real Progressives. When your stuff comes up, you're free to post. So you're already part of the team in your own way. And we'll make sure we get you back on, because this is really beautiful stuff, man. I mean, this is what I've been praying for, is to pull these different schools of thought together so people realize, I mean, conservatives can see MMT at work as well, unfortunately. Well, we need them to understand it too, because once they realize,
yeah, why not?
I mean, it's the working class. If we stop talking about Republican and Democrat and just start looking at working class, and
let's look at our actual condition that we're in here. You know, out of whatever your beliefs are about Republicans and Democrats, like, are you spiraling out? Are you having difficulty paying the bills? Are you, you know, is there no work? Like, that's not a Democrat or a Republican thing, you know, that's a
thing. It's a working class thing, man.
It's a most of us thing right now, working class thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, John, I want to thank you, buddy. This was really phenomenal for me. It's inspiring to know that I had any part in this, because seriously, the black eyes that I have are covered up with liner. I mean, I've been putting makeup on to cover it up because I've been literally getting the shit kicked out of me constantly. And, you know, to have someone of your caliber, who I respect immensely, to have done the homework, dug in, and come out on the other side realizing that we're onto something, it really means the world to me, because it means that we have a chance to talk to other Marxists and really, really, you know, bridge the divide.
And I'm working on it, yeah.
All right, brother. Well, look, thank you all very much for joining us. John, again, thank you, sir, for your time. I really appreciate it immensely. And folks, if you haven't learned modern monetary theory, please do. It's not political at all. There's no cult involved in it. It's just simply an observation of how our monetary system works. I promise you it won't bite, but you'll never be the same again once you learn it. So with that, I'm Steve Grumbine. John, thank you so much again. We'll talk to you all soon. Have a great night, everybody.
Peace.